Okay, guys, this is the second part of segment 1.2, talking about resource allocation and how these resources are distributed. So, in this particular lesson, we're talking about the circular flow model. And we're going to use a graphic that's going to be very beneficial to your understanding. And so, I want to encourage you to have some paper ready to be able to draw this out and to be able to understand the way in which it flows. So, be ready for that as we jump into this next section. Now, um, let's take a look at a couple of questions. Suppose you have a job and you make money, you have an income. What are you going to do with your income? Well, spend it, of course. Yeah, we're going to go out, we're going to buy a car, we're going to buy a house, and buy donuts. That is logical in that order. Now, what about when the business receives your payment? What are they going to use that money for? So if I go out and I buy a house or I go buy a donut, what are they going to use that money for? Well, I don't know. Maybe they're going to go buy more ingredients. Well, maybe. Does the government have any impact on your income? Yeah, I look at my paycheck and I see that they take taxes out of there. Okay, good. Now, did the government have an impact on the business? When you went to go buy that donut or you went to go buy that house, what role does the government play in that, in the business and in their setting of prices? Does the government ever provide income to people, or do they just take money from everybody? Great question. Does the government ever provide goods and services? I bet they do, otherwise I probably wouldn't ask this question. In these questions, we are describing the circular flow of economic activity because each and every one of these scenarios, these questions, have a relationship with one another and all are dependent on the various elements of the circular flow model in the economy. So, before we get into the graphic itself, I want you to understand that there's two different markets that we're going to be talking about. There's the product market. This is the place where goods and services are produced, that are produced by businesses, are sold to the households. And so this would be a wide variety of things. You could think of it like a shopping mall. You could think of it like Amazon. It could be a product market where you go to buy something. The businesses is going to sell you something like a donut. They're going to sell you a smartphone. They're going to sell you a new pillow, whatever it may be. This is the place where the businesses will sell that. Now, there's also the resource market. I have in parentheses here the factor market. Remember back a few days ago, we talked about the factors of production. This is where those factors of production come into play and fit into the circular flow model. So there's these resources. This is the place where resources like land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, they are sold to the businesses. Remember, we said that every business has to have these four factors of production. Otherwise, they can't make their wonderful, glorious donuts. And so they have to have a place in which these are sold from the owners of these things to the businesses. Now, here's what the graphic looks like. We have the resource market up there on the top. We have the product market down on the bottom. I'll get my pointer out here and try to highlight some things here for you. So, resource markets up here and down below. Down below here is the product market. That does not want to go away, so we'll wait just a minute for that. There we go. There's the product market. Now, we also have two different groups of people that are impacted by the resource market and the product market. We have on the right side of your screen, we have the individuals. On the left side, we have the businesses. Now, this is part of the model that you need to copy down, you need to illustrate. And so at any point here, pause the video, write it out, draw it out however you want to, and then resume whenever you're ready. I'm not going to sit here, I'm not going to pause and wait for you. You just do that on your own. Now, in the middle, we've got the government. Forget about them for just a moment. We'll get to them and how they impact each one of these decisions and the circular flow in a moment. So we begin here looking at the businesses who provides the goods and services and they put them out into the product market. We're going to use a donut here because that's just the best illustration I can think of. So the business makes a donut. It goes out in the product market and it is then provided as a good, in this case, to the individuals, to the households, to the people, the consumers that want to buy those donuts. Now, in exchange for that, you've got to pay for the donut. So they're going to spend their money on the good, the donut, and that money is going to go through the product market back to the business. They expect that if I make a donut, somebody's going to buy it, and in exchange for that, I'm going to get revenue. I'm going to get money back. And that money originated from the individuals. So this is part of the cycle of how this money flows through the economy. Now, don't forget, there's that invisible hand that we talked about before in determining the prices, which right now we're not talking about prices. Now, in this particular product market part of the economy, the supply of the donuts are coming from the businesses. Take a look at the bottom left down here. In the bottom left, you have the supply. The goods and services are being supplied by the businesses because the demand on the bottom right of this graphic is brought on by the individuals. They demand donuts, and they should. So the supply of donuts is given by the businesses, and this works through the product market. Now up on the top, we're going to jump into the resource market. So individuals own the resources. They own the factors of production. Remember, factors of production are land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. That's not going to show up on your screen. If you need to remember that and if you need to review that, please write it into your notes. Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So they provide those factors of production into the resource market, which are then used by the businesses to make their goods and services. So in order to make a donut, you have to have resources. Well, where are you going to get those resources from? It's going to come from the individuals. You're going to rent the property from an individual who owns that piece of land. Or you are going to buy the raw materials and raw ingredients from individuals who have made it on their farmland. Now, in exchange for those resources that the business brings in, let's say it's wheat. They need wheat to make their donuts. They are going to have to pay for that wheat. So we call those factor payments because it's one of the factors of production. They're going to pay those back into the resource market, and that money is going to go to the individuals. These are those factor payments. That is part of the income that individuals get for that. So I want to pause here. In your factors of production, each factor has a factor payment connected with it. Again, these are not going to show up on the screen, but you need to know these and make a connection with these. First of all, land. If you provide the resource of land, you're going to expect, in return, rent. Rent is the payment for the resource of land. The payment for labor is wages. If I go work for the business who's making the donuts, I expect to get an hourly wage or a salary. So the factor payment for my labor is the wages. Now, if I provide capital, let's say that I'm going to invest in this donut company and I'm going to buy them a new delivery truck. I'm going to expect something in return for that. If I'm going to give them money to start up their business, I'm going to expect something in return. The factor payment for capital is called interest. And so for every donut the business sells, they're going to provide back a percentage of that to the individual. And those are the green factor payments in the circle up here. The last one is entrepreneurship. Let's say that an individual provided some specific expertise and knowledge to make this business get off the ground and to operate, and he is the business owner. In return for his entrepreneurship, his motivation is profit. So the factor payment connected with entrepreneurship is profit. That helps complete this circular flow part of the model. Everybody with me? Okay, make sure that you see how this operates. Everything in green right there is the money that's circulating. Everything in red or blue is part of the goods or the factors that are circulating as well. So in the resource market, everything in red up there is part of the resources that are being exchanged. On the right side, in the top corner up here, we have the supply being brought by the individuals. They own the land, labor, capital, or entrepreneurship, and they are sending it over here to the businesses who demand all of those things. It's necessary for them to operate their business to have the four factors of production. In exchange for that, the factor payments go back here to the individuals in the form of income. Okay? So if you're not with me here yet, go back, review, and then come back and pick up where we left off, because we're going to throw another wrinkle in here, and that's the government. So the government, part of their job is to provide public goods for both individuals and businesses. Back and forth right here. Well, they can't do that for free. They have to have some sort of income in order to be able to take care of that. You already know what I'm going to say here. You know it's going to be taxes. Governments tax the businesses in order to bring income, and some say they should tax the businesses more and tax the individuals less. Well, look at the circular flow model here. What happens if the businesses have less money to be able to put into the resource market, into this entire circular flow model? Take money out of the green circle right here. What does that mean for individuals? That means they're going to have less income. So there's consequences to every government decision that happens regarding the circular flow model. Individuals are taxed in a couple different ways, both income tax and there's also tax on goods, which right now we're not going to get too deep into. There's two other things that governments provide besides just public goods. They provide to businesses something called a subsidy. Now, a subsidy is a tax break, or it is a benefit that the government does not expect any repayment for a subsidy. They are giving them an incentive to produce more. So let's say that there is, for one reason or another, a high demand for donuts, and businesses are unable to keep up with that demand because they can't buy enough of the machinery they need. So they need a little more money to be able to buy more machinery, but they don't have the capital to do that. So the government might give them a tax subsidy, or they might give them a break on that. And so that way they have less taxes they have to pay, and then they can put more money into that circular flow. Subsidies can come in all kinds of different forms. And right now we don't have time to go into all of the different types of subsidies, but you should know it is coming from the government. There's no repayment expected, and it is meant to increase productivity of the business. Whatever subsidy they're giving them, it is an incentive for the business to make more. And that way it puts more money and it puts more goods into the product market. Now, on the other side over here, we have something called transfer payments. This is a similar idea to the way subsidies work for businesses. Transfer payments work for individuals the same way. There's no expectation of repayment. So the government is going to give individuals certain benefits and breaks, either in their taxes or perhaps in the form of welfare. One other transfer payment that you may be expecting in the near future is government aid on your college tuition. You may apply for financial assistance from the government that does not require repayment. This is different from a loan. They are giving you money, telling you go off to college. We want to make you a productive member of society, and so we're going to give you a benefit package with that. You don't have to pay anything back. Now, in order for the government to afford both transfer payments and subsidies, they need to make that up in taxes somewhere. And so that means that they're going to have to manipulate the budget a little bit and figure out how that's all going to balance itself out. So that is part of how the government gets involved. Now, they're also going to tax the product market. They're going to tax the resource market. And if you were going deeper into that in a college course, you'll probably dig into that a little bit more. For right now, I'm going to leave that out and just focus here more on the exterior and the basics of government involvement. So, few vocab terms here in the circular flow model that I want you to be aware of. In the private sector, this is the part of the economy that's run by individuals and businesses. The public sector is controlled by the government. So in the United States, we have both of these leading toward helping us understand that we're a mixed economy. And so elements in the public sector would be things like public transportation, schools are part of the public sector, energy companies, many of them are run by government dictated agencies. some of which are controlled by private sectors. So Christian schools, private schools would be more in the private sector. You do have companies such as SpaceX that have taken over some of the space exploration and some of the space travel that's beginning to become a major factor, that they have taken over that privately rather than it being uh, part of the public sector controlled by the government. We talked about factor payments on the previous screen. Here it is on paper. Payments for the factor production, rent, wages, interest, and profit. You should know that. Make sure that you are aware of that. And then transfer payments, same thing. We talked about that already. Here it is on the slide. So make sure you get that definition down. Subsidies we talked about as well, so I'm not going to spend much time here, but the government provides a payment to the business. I think we did talk about that on the previous slide. So I'll probably deal with this slide in class. If you have any questions on the circular flow model, please go back, review through the video. You can also type this into YouTube. There's lots of other teachers and videos that describe the circular flow model. There are other variations to it. Some are more complex, some are more simplified. Feel free to explore other resources on this if you still have questions on how the circular flow model works.